Hey, friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
And welcome to the very last Dance review. I want to say thanks once again to Larson from Kick Kicks, the series, for joining us here once again on the Friendoville channel. Appreciate it.
You got it.
This was the last two episodes, man. I thought they were a blast, and they're a lot of fun. And who'd have thought the entire saga would end with some Pearl Jam?
Yeah, I didn't think an album cut from No Code would be the emotional crescendo of The Last Dance, a song that I never actually really cared for. But sure enough, it worked out okay.
I thought the song was appropriate. It's not like my favorite song ever, but when I heard it kick on, I was like, wait a second, are they really using like a Pearl Jam cut and like one that's like not terribly memorable?
But then that ending couplet for the chorus always made me cringe.
Yeah, but it worked for the ending montage there.
Yeah, the instrumentation and stuff wasn't bad.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna get on. Let's see here. Looks like WashingtonPost.com. I don't think I took any notes for this one. But yeah. So this was it covered his return season after he came back. Like that first little bit of a season where he just turted it out and they didn't win shit. They got to Eastern Conference Finals. Didn't really count. And then he came back that next season, and that's what they focused on. And of course, that was the 72-10 season, just this epically amazing season. They brought Rodman in, and it was just great, and everything was awesome again.
Yeah, pretty much. They won 3 more titles at the end. Last Dance review over.
He talks about the flu game, which was actually a food poisoning
game. Yeah, I'd heard that story before.
Shit butt game.
Yeah. So the gist of it is they're in Utah prior to Game 6 of the 96-97 NBA Finals.
Mm-hmm.
Not the 72-10 year. That was against the Sonics the year after, where they're only 69-13.
Yeah.
And so it was late, like 10 at night. The only place that was open was one pizza joint. So they had a pizza delivered to the hotel, and there's 5 people delivering the pizza. And it was Jordan, his trainer, and his assistant. And they're all like, doesn't look right.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan's hungry. He eats the whole pizza, wakes up 2 a.m, basically crapping his pants.
Yeah.
So they call the team doctor, and he's in bed all day. I'm sure he's got IVs in him. And everybody's telling him, you don't have to play. Don't play. You're in no shape to play. Of course, this is Jordan. So what does he do? He plays.
Yeah.
And what else does he do? He has a fantastic game.
He has, yeah. The first, so God, who were they playing? They were playing
The Jazz.
The Jazz, yeah, that's right. They were playing the Jazz. They get out to an 8-18 lead, and then from then on, like the Bulls, it took them like a couple of quarters to actually catch back up because they kept on showing the thing. But Jordan was just on fire. It looked like they were maybe on the road to getting blown out, and they were able to keep that sort of 10-point, buffer, and then they chipped away at it by the third quarter. And the fourth quarter, they had like tied it up or whatever. So yeah, that was kind of interesting to hear his take on that. I like that he said, I got a pizza. I ate the whole thing myself.
Yeah.
He polished off the pizza himself. I thought one of the more interesting things, and I forget if it was this episode or I think it was this episode, they gave Steve Kerr his own.
Yeah, it was episode
segment.
9. Yeah, they gave him a pretty good chunk of the episode about Kerr, him growing up. I guess I didn't know his dad was president of the American University in Beirut and was killed while he was over there.
I think I had heard
Kerr,
that or I'd read it once, but I didn't. When you have it in documentary form, it refreshes everything.
And they asked Kerr, hey, did you ever talk to Michael about what happened to your fathers? And he just says, no, that dialogue never came up. And then they went into his story about growing up in Los Angeles because his dad was professor at UCLA. Eventually, he moved on, president American University of Beirut. He was walking out of an elevator and got shot in the midst of all the turmoil that was going on in Beirut in the 80s. And him having to deal with that and what he did to distract his mind from all that was basketball, focusing on basketball. So he only got offered one scholarship, University of Arizona. Took it, he said, without even visiting the campus. I think he got drafted in 87 or 88, I want to think. That's when I started watching college basketball and being originally from Arizona. U of A was my team because I was the Sean Elliott years too.
Yeah.
And so I'm somewhat familiar with Steve Kerr's. Maybe it was '86 he left. I can't remember exactly. Somewhat familiar with Steve Kerr's time at U of A. And so he made it to the league, bounced around a bit, ended up on the Bulls, and I think went to the Spurs afterwards. He got traded to the Spurs, I think, after this and won some more titles. But it was good to see how, give him a good focus. So it's really set the backdrop up, which they kind of established the previous episode where they talked about Jordan punching him, building up to him hitting that game winner. I believe in Game 6 of the series where Jordan got food poisoning, and sending them on to their 5th title.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was good stuff. Yeah, because obviously, Kerr hit that he hit that game winner in Game 6. So that was good stuff. I like the championship parade thing where Kerr said, I thought to myself, I guess I have to bail Michael out again. Everybody's all cracking up about that one. I really like the focus of their matchup against the Pacers. And you forget just how damn good Reggie Miller was. You
forget how loaded that Pacers team was.
Yeah,
that
it
team
was.
Loaded.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah, when they started talking about that, when Jalen Rose started talking about that, or
Jalen Reggie, Travis Best, Mark Jackson, Antonio Davis, Dale Davis.
Both the Davises, yeah, exactly.
Was it Derek McKee? They had a lot of talent on that team.
And Reggie made a really good point, which, it can never be underestimated in basketball especially. But this goes across all sports. Learning how to win at a championship level, that extra experience in those situations is something that you cannot – it's the reason why people with rings or trophies or whatever are worth more in the market, because they bring that championship experience. And when Reggie says, I think we had the better team that year, it's just we didn't have the championship DNA yet, and they never ended up having it. He says that's what put them over the top, and that could be said about so many other teams, is that extra thing. And that's always been really fascinating to me, the idea that knowledge of how to win on that level, in that extra situation.
Oh, that atmosphere,
that atmosphere, under that pressure, is something that's totally different, that you can only obtain by getting there in the first place.
Well, there's one other thing towards the end of episode 10 that I can't remember the dude's name. He was an author, talking about how Jordan lived in the moment.
And
how he doesn't worry about shots he hasn't taken yet. And, growing up, at least speaking for myself, you're out there playing, you're imagining greatness at whatever you're going to achieve later in your adult life. And you always picture yourself in certain situations where you're going to succeed. But usually as you get older, when you start picturing yourselves in situations, you might think your mind, this is what can happen if I succeed. But also the doubt enters your mind, this is what can happen if I fail. And that brings forth anxiety, because especially in situations that are pressure packed, if you fail, the stakes are higher. That brings forth anxiety. The way I interpret what this dude was saying is like, Jordan doesn't worry about that. He doesn't worry about the next shot until he takes it.
Yeah.
And you see him before the first game of that year's finals, 97-98. He's got his headphones on. He's on the bus. He's got some, what's his name, Keddy Lattimore, advanced copy of it.
That he got before anybody else, yeah.
Yeah, not even out yet. And he's on the bus, and he's dancing. And he is loose. He is relaxed. It looks like he's heading the bus to the airport to go on vacation, not to start the NBA Finals of what is probably going to be his last, what ended up being 6 games as a Chicago Bull.
Yeah.
There's no ounce of pressure on him. No scintilla, no hint of any sort of anxiety. He is relaxed. He is in his element. He is living at that moment. And when he gets on the court and ball's in his hand, then he'll think about the shot he's going to take. He'll think about it.
The guy you were talking about says, people will travel to Tibet to find how to live in the moment. That's how this guy has just learned to live. Like, that's how he's wired, I guess. And I guess it's just it's a brain thing, I guess. I'm
sure confidence is part of it too. He's been in circumstances enough to trust his abilities. So, and if he doesn't do it, oh well, he'll get it next time.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's, if Jordan Jordan and personalities it's in the wiring of the brain. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you get the experience, but the bottom line is a guy who's, you take a look at Scotty Burrell, a guy who has all the talent in the world, but the way he's wired doesn't, it precludes him from having the killer instinct and the ultra competitive drive that Jordan was trying to hammer into him. And even in episodes 9 and 10, he's still hammering away at Scotty Burrell. It is my favorite subplot of this entire thing.
And when after the game and Jordan's I think it's before Game 6 or before, maybe it's before or after, where they're talking, and Scotty's like, "Yeah, you're going out west or something. Hey, Mike, what time's our flight to California? Because I'm going with you."
Yeah, exactly. He ain't sweating Jordan at all, and Jordan keeps on trying, and I think at a certain point he just realized, well, this guy is on a different path than I am, but it's an interesting project nonetheless. Yeah, that dynamic is hilarious. They could have mined that for a lot more, and they mined it for quite a bit. It was hilarious. Yeah. I saw somebody on Twitter say something like, "This is a fascinating 10-part documentary on how Scotty Burrell got over bullying," which I thought was hilarious. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting stuff, and just to remember how they said Reggie Miller was, and it's funny because Reggie Miller comes off like, whenever you see him in interviews, he comes off as a guy who doesn't sweat anything. But God, I remember watching that. If you ever get a chance, I know you've seen this, but the 30 for 30 on him and his sister and the Eastern Conference Finals. No, it was the semifinals, the Eastern Conference semifinals against the Knicks in like 94, 95. When he did when the Knicks choked it away in Game 7 or whatever it was, and he was taunting Spike Lee on
scored 9 points in 7 seconds or something like that.
One of the best 30 for 30s, because it was told in such a lighthearted comedic manner, and the punchline was, unfortunately we lost in the Eastern Conference Finals the next series. Yeah. And that was Reggie Miller, but he was a killer on the court, and I forgot just how much this dude was willing to throw hands on the court.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was scrappy, man. He was not afraid to fight.
And they show footage of that. I was like, oh, I remember that, man. He was vicious. I remember being a big fan of his.
Yeah.
But it is funny, like, within the context of all the teams that Jordan kept from getting championships. You got the Pacers potentially. You got the Knicks. You got maybe the Magic. Over in the West, you've got the great Utah Jazz team, which two times in a row, they went down. The Sonics, of course. But yeah, there's so many teams, and those, the 90s were that was just the Bulls era, and then the Rockets were able to slide in there and get their two when he was gone.
Yeah, let's talk about. I'm skipping ahead a bit, but I found this interesting. So at the night after they won their last title, Jerry Reinsdorf says he pulled Phil Jackson aside and said, "I want you to come back for one more year." And Phil, I guess thought it over for a little bit, and he said, it wouldn't sit well with Jerry Krause, because this is a decision he made to run the organization this way." It seemed like at that point he'd already made peace with the fact this was their last dance. It's just best if I just go, if I take a break. And then subsequently they had Jordan the iPad, and so this is what Reinsdorf had to say about essentially rebuilding the team and tearing apart this championship foundation.
And Jordan said at that point he had never taught. He was like, "Oh, this will be interesting because we've never talked about this," which is fascinating. But go ahead with what you're going to say.
So essentially, Reinsdorf says at this point, given the success the team has had, the role players on the team essentially it's going to cost too much to keep them all signed than the value we're going to get out of it, because a lot of them are getting up there in years, are veterans, have been around a long time. He named Kerr, Ron Harper, I believe, Scotty as well. And so he said at this point it's going to cost too much for the value we're going to get, because he expects that he's going to sign a lot of these guys to long-term high money deals. And Jordan sees that. He gives a perfect meme reaction and says, "Okay, I've been playing under one-year contracts for a while. You telling me Steve Kerr wouldn't come back on a one-year deal for a shot at number 7? And he says, "Scotty might be a little bit tougher, but if all of us are coming back to get number 7, I don't know if Scotty would have done it, but anyways. But here's the thing: is weird is that when Scotty left after that season, it wasn't as a free agent; he was traded.
Was it a sign and trade thing?
Maybe.
Because that might have been the thing. It's like, well, we know that he's not going to, let's get what we can for him.
Maybe, because Scotty was traded. Steve Kerr was traded. And I don't know why you do. I mean, Steve Kerr was a really good role player for the team, but usually you don't do sign and trades for role players. Listen to what they got for Scottie Pippen. So the Bulls traded him to the Rockets for Roy Rogers. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with Roy Rogers' NBA career?
I thought he was a Cowboy.
And a second-round pick. That's all they got for Scottie Pippen.
Yeah.
So Roy Rogers, he's actually still an assistant coach with the Bulls. His best season was his first in the league for Vancouver, where he played 82 games and averaged 6 points a game. After that, he never played more than 40 games in a season. And according to this, he never actually played for the Bulls.
Let's see here.
Oh my gosh, he was waived by the Bulls after appearing in one game. So essentially, they traded Scottie Pippen for a second-round pick. That is ludicrous.
Yeah.
You tell me they could have gotten more for Scottie Pippen than someone they waived after a game and a second-round pick that became Jake Voskuhl?
Let's see here. The Bulls agreed to trade to the Houston Rockets. Get out of here. The Bulls are instrumental because they signed directly with the Rockets. They would not have been allowed to include incentives on the new collective bargaining rules. In exchange, the Bulls will get Roy Rogers, second-round pick. For the Bulls, it's a deal with an eye on the future. So this is from the Chicago Tribune at the time. They get a higher second-round draft pick, and the Rockets will pay Rogers' salary of $862,000. So, yeah. Rogers' contract ends after the season, and the Bulls will have the salary cap space for the free agent market. That's why they did the sign and trade.
It was a salary
cap space. Yeah. So I mean, I would imagine that's better than getting nothing, because
I don't know. You get a player that you waive after a game. You essentially are getting nothing. You essentially are getting nothing.
Well, the salary cap space.
But if
okay, so it says here the team did him a favor. The sign and trade transaction enabled him to make several $1 million more than if he would have signed with Houston or any other team as a free agent. So maybe that was their way of saying thanks to Scottie Pippen in the end. I mean, it's weird to think that in this day and age.
I know, but like if the idea was from Krause's perspective, the idea is, well, we're going to blow up this team so we can start building towards the future. Like Scottie Pippen is worth more assets than the second round pick.
Sure.
Whether there's a sign and trade, whether it benefits you from a salary cap perspective or not. There's ways you got to be able to structure a deal. If you're trading Scottie Pippen to build for the future, they get assets that help you build for the future other than a higher second round pick. The odds of a second round pick making it in the NBA are very low.
So, okay, I don't know. I'll suggest this. It says here also, let's see here. The Bulls also completed a deal, sent Luke Longley to Phoenix Suns. Pippen and Kerr both sought sign and trade deals from the Bulls because under the new collective bargaining agreement, a team can only sign its own players beyond the age of 36, thus allowing Pippen and Kerr, both 33, to sign 5-year deals. I'm going to assume this. I'll just assume this. I assume the Bulls did what they could. You know what I mean? Like, I know what you mean. I don't see anything. I don't know. But I'm assuming that if they could have gotten a player commensurate with his ability, his experience, his skills, they would have. You know what I mean? Like, I just assume that they did what they could do.
I don't know, man.
That's what I'm going to assume.
I don't know.
I think that this is
like
where
if I put Scottie Pippen on the trade block and this is the best offer I get, I guess if you're gonna lose him for nothing, I guess the second round pick's better than nothing at the same time.
Well, what's the alternative? Like, if let's say he was there for let's say he had another year on his contract.
Yeah,
he just wouldn't have played.
All right.
He just would have been like, well, fuck you guys. I'm not going to do this, because he was perfectly willing to do that the season before.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of that.
I'll say this about Jordan's assessment. I don't disagree with your saying. I'm just saying there's got to be a reason for it, and I'm assuming there is. I think this is the one argument, and I think it was even in Jordan's body language and in what he said here. I think that Reinsdorf, I think that his point was probably sound. I think that these guys just won 3 championships. They won 3. Time to get that money. And when I say money, I mean long-term deal, tons of freaking money. I don't think that a fourth one, if you're Kerr, Kukoc, whoever, or if it's a seventh, or for Rodman, or if it's a seventh one for Pippen and whoever else might have been there still, but I don't think a lot of people. I mean,
that's pretty much it.
Paxson had retired. Horace Grant moved on.
Yeah, I think it was just Jordan and Scotty and me. Like Bill Cartwright was part of the coaching staff by that point.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't think that any of them would have. I don't. I mean, maybe
it's not a certainty for sure that especially Pippen, who started the season injured, delayed his surgery because he was so unhappy about his contract. Mm-hmm. It would have been tough to convince him to come back,
really
seemingly, because he'd been waiting to get that money.
Yeah,
that he should have been paid years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Kerr's in the same boat. I don't know. I understand your point. A lot of players, they get wondering, like, all right, time to cash in.
Yeah. Kerr had 3 rings. That dude was looking for money, and nobody could blame him for that.
Oh, obviously not. No, you couldn't. And yeah, like it's interesting to see Jordan's response, because I'm sure from his perspective, it makes all the sense in the world. Because it's one thing that matters.
And you're exactly right. From his perspective, it makes all the sense in the world. But you could also tell there was, for one of the first times, because in everything he says, in everything he talks about, he is so confident in his own words. He is so overly confident in his own words and his own retelling of everything. This is the one time where there was a hint of, well, you know what I mean? I think even he knew. The business of it. These guys aren't going to play for a 1-year Yeah, he could do it. He's been in the league since 1984.
And also his 1-year contract for $30 million.
Yeah, so. I exactly. Yeah, you get
one thing.
You offer Steve Kerr $30 million for a year. Yeah, he'll come back.
One thing that might have influenced this Pippen deal, now to look at it, that was the lockout season.
Yeah,
I don't know, depending on when the trade happened, if the uncertainty about, although the way you read it, you read it, it makes it sound like there was a labor agreement in place, which would make me believe is post lockout, but I don't remember exactly the timeline of all that.
Yeah. Although, you know what's funny, dude, is that Pippen himself. So this might lend some credence to Jordan's thing. Pippen himself, on the Rachel Nichols show. I forget what they call it. But it's really, it's whenever I see little clips of it, I'm always like, man, I got to watch this. Pippen himself said there was a lockout season. He was putting on the Bulls. If they had kept the team together, us only playing 50 games, we would have for sure gotten that 8th or that 7th title.
I don't know, man. That was the first year of the Duncan Spurs. That was a good team.
It was a damn good team. That would have been an amazing series. But Pippen, in retrospect, and this is 20 years later, he seems to think, hey, I would have come back.
you know what also he said in retrospect during this last episode was that Jerry Krause, one of the greatest general managers in basketball history. He didn't really seem to feel that way at the time.
No, nobody did. You know, it's one of those. I think that's totally one of those things where, you know, the bad memories fade away and the good memories stick around.
Totally.
But yeah, boy, they shit on him, and it's funny too because like I forget, I guess it was the '98 championship celebration where they ask him, hey, what's next for the Bulls? And he's covered in champagne or whatever. And he's like, oh, I'm not worried about any of that stuff right now. He's probably celebrating inside. Ooh, I get to rebuild another team.
Okay, so this is what the Bulls got for Steve Kerr. They got Chuck Person and a first-round pick from the Spurs. The Spurs sent a first-round pick for the Bulls for Steve Kerr, yet for Scottie Pippen, they could only get a second-round pick and a player they waived one game into the season.
I don't know because Pippen, he had been in the league. Maybe it's this. Pippen had been in. What were his numbers like in Houston when he went there? Because he had been in the league for a while. Since what, 85? Was it 85, 86?
86, 87, I want to say.
86, 87, and this was 98. So he was already a 12-year veteran. And yeah, if you look at his series, with the bad back and everything, he had just had whatever surgery he needed.
So his first year in Houston, he averaged 14.5 points. But that was also a team with Olajuwon, Barkley, and Drexler.
What was his other stats? He was known for like steals and...
Yeah. So he averaged about 6.5 rebounds a game.
They had Barkley on that team.
2 steals. He was only in Houston for 1 year.
Where did he go after that?
Portland.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
I mean, his days as he was never a huge scorer, but his days as a scorer were definitely off the table in terms of all his other numbers. They were, for the most part, in line with what he'd been doing prior in his career. Mm-hmm. It's just interesting that, and what they get for Luke Longley.
I just had it up. He went to the Suns. They get a Phoenix #1 draft pick. Plus Mark Bryant, Martin Millsap, and Bubba Wells.
A conditional first-round pick. Huh. So it's interesting. Of the 3 trades they had that offseason, the one they got the least for was Scottie Pippen. Mm-hmm. Far and away the best player.
Yeah. League sources say Kerr will receive $11 million over 5 years. He's only getting over $2 million per year for 5 years.
That's probably a pretty good raise for him, considering he was probably making a lot less than that for the Bulls.
Yeah. Yeah, things are a lot different now. My goodness.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
He could make $11 million a season now if he played.
I liked Jordan's story. Just another story about a guy going on his list. He literally called it a list this time, Byron Russell, when he was a rook, saying, hey, you need to come back because I could guard you.
You know what I loved about that was Jordan knew. He said, "Oh, I know exactly what he does on defense. He plays on his toes, the tip of his balls of his feet, and he'd do a head or shoulder fake one way and go the other way. He's lost.
Yeah,
it's like he'd watch tape. He's like, that's how I get past him.
What's your final analysis on the perceived push off? Because I'll tell you mine first. Is that I've always heard that knock. And whenever I see the footage, I think one of two things. Either it's the way that Jordan and everybody else explained it in this, which of course is going to be beneficial to Jordan, that he was already moving that way. It totally looks like that.
Oh, he is totally moving that way already. Yeah.
The other part of me thinks Jordan has been doing this so long. He's so crafty, and he's like a magician. He could push off and make it look like he wasn't pushing off. I don't know where I land on it.
The truth, I feel like, is somewhere in the middle where Russell's momentum already was carrying him that way. Mm-hmm. Jordan gives him a little bit of a push.
Yeah.
And also another thing about Jordan putting his hand there, I think I don't know if his motivation was to push per se. Also, Jordan was crossing over when Russell was heading the opposite direction. Yeah. And I felt like Jordan kind of needed to do that to maintain his own balance.
Yeah.
And if he happened to push Russell along the way, so be it. They're not going to call that point in the game. It's not going to be called.
No.
It wasn't a huge egregious push off where he stiff armed somebody. Yeah, he crossed him up.
Yeah.
Russell was out of position anyways. Mm-hmm. Russell was already headed that direction before Jordan started the push, if there was a serious push. Mm-hmm. So I think whatever contact there was inconsequential to Jordan being open. By the time the push happened, Jordan was already open to get that shot off.
Yeah.
It was just I think about him maintaining his balance to get the shot up.
Yeah. I liked it was really cool. How'd you like, I forgot about this. How'd you like after the Pacers win, Jordan going up to Larry Bird saying, "Fuck you, bitch." And laughingly, and Bird laughed it off, but I'm like, you just beat these guys and you said, "Hey, fuck you, bitch."
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was funny.
It was interesting seeing so after one of the games and
he said, "You bitch, fuck you. You gave us a run for our money. You can work on that golf game of yours." That was funny.
Yeah. So after one of the games, I think in 96, 97, Stockton and Malone are hanging out outside the media area as Jordan's coming out, shake hands, And then like a year later, Malone gets on the bus at the end of the series to congratulate Jordan and the Bulls. It was funny to me is he's wearing the same exact clothes.
Yeah. I saw a lot of critiquing of Karl Malone's. Of course, I remember that vividly, even back to his WCW. And of course, they bring up WCW, Rodzilla, and you have to love how Phil Jackson treated all that. And that was one of the more interesting things. Was just the key to Rodman was letting Rodman be Rodman, and Rodman was if you let him do his thing, he would prove it on the court. It's like he would have a better game, like when he sank those 2 free throws and he was a notoriously bad free throw shooter after the Nitro incident. It's like, this dude was looking to prove to you, hey, let me be me and I will put in the extra effort for you. And that's why they work so perfect together. Let's see here. The stuff about how Jordan felt about his security staff. What was his name? Gus? Was it Gus?
Yeah, Gus. Yeah.
Gus Lett. Yeah. That was very interesting stuff. How Gus was a policeman, and he was sort of the second father figure especially after Jordan lost his dad.
My understanding that he was both he and his family were pretty close to all his security guys.
Yeah.
One thing I wish we had gotten more perspective of from this whole thing is Jordan's kids. We see him a little bit. We see Marcus and Jeffrey and Jasmine is his daughter's name, I believe. A little bit. So they asked his sons, hey, did you go to Utah for any of those games? And they said no. Our dad always saw Utah as more hostile territory, so we watched the game in the basement.
Yeah, I thought about that a little bit too, and it didn't shock me because you sort of understood at that point. Because you had mentioned it would be nice, and I totally agree, but I understand why they didn't. Why Jordan didn't address anything. He didn't address his time with the playing with the Wizards. They didn't even reference that he did that. This was squarely about the Bulls, and Jordan
definitely
was just the most prominent figure, and so they didn't dive into his personal life. I don't even. Is he still married to?
No, not to the mother.
Okay,
of those children at least. No, they got divorced.
We got
a long time ago.
2 shots of the sons and 1 shot of the daughter. Or interview segments rather, and it was very brief.
It would have been interesting to see because Jordan said throughout that, and it echoes what Ric Flair said that being great, being successful comes with sacrifices you have to make, and the level of dedication he put into his craft, you would think means less time at home.
I wonder if the filmmakers were even. I wonder if that was maybe a territory that they weren't permitted to go into.
Or that's entirely possible. Yeah. I mean, and it's not to say that Jordan was not a good father because he was so focused on being great at the basketball court. It's just hear his kid's perspective on what his strive for greatness means to them now, how that influenced them. I know Marcus, I think both his sons played basketball at a collegiate level. I think Marcus did at UCF, and because he has a sneaker shop in Orlando now. Yeah. So I think he's probably the one that went to UCF, and like the expectations that were placed on him, having that Jordan name, even stepping foot in the basketball court, what his dad tried to instill in him.
Yeah.
And granted, this is all post Bulls, so maybe they didn't want to expand the story past the end of Game 6 in '98, and that's fair. But there just seemed to be a lot of stuff, and it's entirely possible he's like, no, let's not get family too much into it. Because
I would speculate that would be the case, that he would say, hey, anything that's on the court and even off the court that dives into my various controversies or whatever made the media is probably fair game. I would suspect, this is just pure speculation on my part. And
that's entirely possible. It's just, even if you don't really broach the idea of my dad was gone a lot, and it'd be cool to have him around more. That's not next what I'm talking about. Just their perspective from watching their dad do pretty cool things as a kid, how that affected them, how that influenced them, what it meant to them, not just living during that time, but being in that same household while all the madness surrounding their dad is going on.
Given that they, seemingly have fairly productive lives, at least the one kid who has a shoe shop does. Yeah, it would have been interesting to hear about that. I totally agree. I wonder what the behind the scenes, guidelines or limitations might have played into that. But yeah, and then it ended on a lovely Pearl Jam montage. That was hilarious. The Last Dance playlist.
I first heard that Eddie Vedder, like his guttural scream. I was like, oh gosh, what Pearl Jam song? This don't be a new song because the new stuff's not very good.
Oh no, I know.
And then I heard, I was like, oh, that's off No Code. I know that song.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that song.
Yeah, but it is like that the guitar. I don't know what you call that part of the song.
The bridge part of it, where it's instrumental.
Bridge, where it's just a guitar. Yeah, that's good stuff.
The bass, the boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Jeff Ament on the bass. Yeah,
good fit stuff. Really good. Pearl Jam, bunch of basketball nerds.
Yep. In the Alive and Even Flow video, know what shoes Eddie Vedder's wearing?
Oh, has he got
Jordan
J's on?
6 playoffs. Jordan 6 playoffs.
Nice. Oh man. Anyways, this has been fun. Thanks again, Larson from Kick Kicks, the series, for being on here. And thanks everybody.
Why not?
Yeah. Anyways, well, shut up. We'll talk to you guys later. Goodbye.
Fine. I won't be back.
Oh no! Come back for something.
Never.
Oh no! I fucked up.
You did.